Well, hello. Hope you guys are well. It's been a while since we've had a chat, hasn't it? As you may well have noticed, I've started making videos again and releasing them. But we'll talk about that another day and the reasons why I stopped and the reasons why I started. All I really wanted to do here was just to introduce this video. And the reason I feel like I need to introduce it is because it was recorded back in late October last year. So it's going to look a bit out of place with some of the others. But yeah, I wanted to put it out. And because we're talking about autumn, or I talk about autumn in it, I felt like I needed just to give you this brief introduction to say, I know it's quite an old one, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. So here it is. Good morning and welcome to today's video. I hope you guys are well. Today I'm out at Holme Fen with a couple of good friends, Jamie Overland and James Burns, and we planned this a couple of weeks ago actually. Because you know this is a peak time of year to get some really beautiful autumn colours in the mist and the lovely early morning light. Neither of which is here today because it's really dark. There's no mist and it's chucking it down with rain. So instead of having loads of compositions just being thrown at you, it's actually a little bit more difficult today to find something. But you know, I'm going to have a look and persevere and see what I can find. But yeah, it's going to be a tricky one today. So this is really going to test my photography skills. So there are probably two things that are the photographer's enemy. And when you put them together, it's never good, especially in woodland. One is poor light and the other is wind. And there's a little bit of a breeze here as well as quite poor light. And that means that you have to have a longer shutter speed to expose correctly for the conditions, right? That's a given. But the trouble is when it's windy, a longer shutter speed means you're going to get movement in your frame simply because you can't freeze the motion. So when it's windy, you've got the leaves moving, which means that the shutter speed has to be such that you're freezing the leaves. However, because there's poor light, if you have a fast shutter speed, you're getting an underexposed shot. So the answer to that is ISO. You bump your ISO up to compensate for the fact that you have little light and you have to shoot at a high shutter, but then you're introducing noise into your shot. Now there is one other plan that you can use, and that is to wait for the wind to drop. And essentially that's what I've been doing here for the last 10 minutes. I've framed up a shot. There's no light. Okay, there's no light. Let's just get this straight. There is no light. So the next thing that I'm going to be looking for is colour or shapes. So I've found some nice colour here. I've got an oak tree in the background which is still green, very green, and I've got a birch tree in the mid-ground, not foreground but mid-ground, which is very yellow because the leaves are turning. And then I've got some ferns in the foreground, sort of a bit closer, call it foreground, which are brown, and then going back into some greener ferns. So basically I've got some colours there. Like I said, there's no light at all. I'm hoping that the shapes and the colours will make the shot. Now, I'm shooting it at f8, which is something I don't normally do, but because it's quite a way back, I'm hoping that everything will stay in focus, even though it's at f8, and that's helping me with the shutter speed a little bit. And yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky conditions today, and that's just life really. Sometimes you come out and you get the fantastic magical light. Sometimes you come out and you get piss wet through. Oh, like today. Anyway, let's hope that one's come out. I'm going to spend a bit of time looking for another shot now. So momentarily the rain stopped, which is quite nice, and it's brightening up a touch. It's still very grey, but it is brightening up a little bit. And I found this scene anyway in front of me here. Basically you've got these little stand of birches, and there's two prominent ones and one through the background, and then there's a little bit of colour on this sort of smaller, I assume it's a smaller birch tree to the right of that, and then looking through you've got a very dark green sort of section right in the background with some oaks or something where there's a bit of shadow, and I like that contrast between the light of the birches, a little bit of colour and the darkness. Now there is a tree on the other side which I could use to kind of, you know, balance it out or anchor the right hand side or whatever you want to call it, but I don't actually think it looks that good if I do that. I think it looks better if I just leave the right hand side open with this dark area, so it sort of leads you, I feel like it leads you from left to right. So you've got the light birches, the colour of the trees, and then the dark, it sort of leads you across. The first thing you look at are these bright white trunks, then you look at the colour, then you move over to the darker area to sort of inspect and say, "Ooh, what's down there?" If you had another tree on the right hand side, I think you'd sort of flip between the bright of the trees on the left and the bright of the trees on the right, and you wouldn't have that natural progression into the shot. That sounds like I'm talking a load of rubbish really, doesn't it? But there is some sense in that. I think there's some sense in it anyway. I feel like it makes sense. Whether you look at the picture and go, "Oh, now I've been led through that picture, well done photographer," is a whole other thing. But yeah, I feel like I've got a couple of shots in the bag anyway. It is brightening up, as I said. It's tricky to shoot in these conditions. It tests you, so that's got to be a good thing. So I've moved over from that part of the fen into another part here, which is separated by like a ditch that runs all the way along the length of the fen, and it kind of dissects it and puts it into different sections. And I was walking along and I just really, well, I spotted this colour, and it's almost like a wall of colour, because you've obviously got this one tree here, or several trees that have got this really beautiful sort of yellowy green. And I really want to make use of that, and I was trying to work out how I could do it, and I've sort of come off the track very slightly. There's sort of like a little track that leads through here, and there's these two birch trees that are on the right hand side of the image, and so what I'm doing is I'm just using those really sort of, as I said it before, like anchors if you like, on the right hand side, but as the interest really, and then the whole of the left hand side is just this colour. Now there's still no light, there's little patches of blue up here, but there's still no light really to speak of, so it isn't going to be a particularly contrasty strong image. What I'm thinking is to kind of decontrast it even further and just sort of have it as like a real pastel-y soft sort of image with these two sort of birch trunks heading up, and then this sort of little wall of colour behind, but like I say, very soft, very sort of pastel-y type of image. May work, may not work, but I think it's got potential, otherwise I wouldn't have dragged myself up here to take it, would I? So we shall see. Well, we're starting to get a little bit of blue sky creeping in now, so hopefully the sun's not too far away, which would be really nice. But while we're waiting, I've come across another scene here. So we're still on this track here, and I'm looking sort of through into the sort of sea of ferns that have all turned a lovely orangey brown colour, and there's a really nice single, I think it's a birch, I'm not sure, but the leaves on it are fantastic through the back there. It probably isn't a birch actually, I'm not quite sure what it is. But you've got some beautiful leaves, and they're sort of like in right off into the distance, and then you've got all these lovely strong tall birch trunks that are sort of in the foreground. So I've actually got this in crop mode, so essentially I'm shooting this right out at the equivalent of about 150 millimeters, and I think I've got separation on pretty much all of the individual birch trees, and then you've got this lovely bit of yellow sort of light, if you like, reflecting off of these leaves on the right hand side of the image. I think it looks really nice. I think that's quite a nice graphic shot, and with a bit of processing that could look really good. Well, hallelujah, we've finally got a bit of sun. Fantastic, it's lovely. Bit of blue sky, bit of sun. It just makes a world of difference to woodland photography. It really does. I love a bit of diffuse light, I love a bit of soft light, but when there's no light, as soon as the sun comes out, it's like, oh my God, it's totally changed everything. So I've got these little stand of birches here, and basically the sun is side lighting them all. It's absolutely gorgeous, and there's one particular birch on the left hand side that's got an awful lot of leaves on it still, and oh my God, I can just see a letterbox shot here, a little bit of the brown ferns at the bottom, a little bit of the sky cropped down so we haven't got any of the nasty highlights, and just the lovely sunlight hitting those ferns and that lovely little bit of leaf on the left. Oh it's probably going to be rubbish, but it's better than anything I've taken so far today because there's some light. What a difference the sun makes as well. It literally transforms the whole scene. The light is so important in photography, and I know sometimes I say I like diffuse light in the woods, but sometimes there's just, well, often there's no substitute for some really nice light. It's quite strong actually, it's quite harsh at the moment, but it absolutely transforms the scene. So for instance, I was over taking a shot earlier in the gloom, and I revisited that on the way back with the sun out, and it's like two different shots. It's the shot I was talking about when I was saying about the light leading into the dark. I'll show you actually the shot that I took originally, which I think I've already shown you anyway, and then I'll show you the shot, maybe slightly differently composed because I wasn't in exactly the same place, but you can see the difference the light makes. Even though the first one may look quite subtle and quite diffuse, the second one is so strong, and the light to dark is so stark. Because of the sun. It's just amazing the difference that a bit of light makes. It really is.